Marushka stood outside the door, her apron full of strawberries. She knocked, and her mother and sister were surprised to hear that knock. They opened the door, and as soon as she stepped inside, the smell of those berries filled the room, so sweet. The mother and stepsister hurried to begin to eat those red berries, the juices running down their cheeks, running down. Do you think that they offered Marushka any of those berries? No, they did not. They ate them, and then a peace settled over the house, at least for a time.
The stepmother and sister, they still wanted to get rid of Marushka. And the next day, while it was snowing outside, and Marushka was sweeping the floor while her stepsister was lazing near the warm oven, suddenly the sister had another idea. Marushka, I am longing to eat red apples. Go outside, go into the forest and bring me some red apples. And Marushka got scared. Sister, just take a look outside. It is not the time for red apples. Ha! How dare you? I demand apples. And you go. And don't you dare to come back. Without them, it would be your end. And together with her mother, they pushed Marushka out of the door and bolted the door behind them. Marushka stood there without a coat, without her boots, and she was freezing, but she made her way up to the mountain, where there was still the fire, and the 12th month were there, with January on the high seat.
Once again, Marushka asked permission to go and warm herself by the fire. And Brother January, looking sternly at her, welcomed her to come closer. And then, as she warmed her hands, called out, "And again, child? What brings you now?" "Oh, well, my sister longs for apples." "It is not the time for apples." "Yes, I know. But she longs for apples, and she told me that I cannot return. I cannot return home until I bring her apples, or it will be the end of me. Do you know where I might find some apples?" At this, Brother January shook his head. He stood up and he walked across the circle again to those figures that looked more mature. And he pointed the staff and said, "Brother September, take the high seat." And the two switched places, September going to the high seat. And once there, he swung the staff 3 times above his head. And when he did, once again the fire blazed up, not quite so high as before, but still. As the fire blazed, the snows melted. The grass began to be seen through the snows, and the trees, their leaves from bright green, turned the many colors of autumn, and then began to fall. But Through the trees, Marushka spied an apple tree. Go, Marushka, shake the tree to get those apples. And she ran and she shook the tree, and one apple fell. She picked it up. She shook the tree again. A second apple fell, and she picked it up. 2 apples, Marushka. Now it is time for you to return. Thank you, she called, and putting the apples in her apron, she began the walk home.
When she knocked at the door, the stepmother and sister were surprised, but also eager to open the door. As soon as Marushka stepped into the house was filled with the delicious scent of the apples, and Marushka, full of joy, presented the apples to her sister. Look, I have brought you apples. But the sister was not happy. 2? You've brought 2 apples? Whatever happened to the other ones? I wasn't allowed to shake the tree more often. I was told I had to pick up 2 apples, and that was it. The sister got really angry as she listened to those words and nearly wanted to beat Marushka. But then the scent of the apples made her want to eat the apples. And so she snatched the apples from Marushka's hands, sat down in the kitchen and started to eat one of the apples. The other apple she gave to her mother. And both women enjoyed the apples so greatly. They had never had such delicious apples. And as soon as they had finished, they wanted more.
They wanted more, and the sister demanded to know where Marushka had gotten those apples. Oh, up on the mountain. I went there and the 12 months helped me. Well, then I will go myself and I will get more apples, said the sister. But the mother called out, It is getting dark. Wait till tomorrow. Now is not the time to go. But the sister, she was used to having her own way all the time. And she did not listen to her mother. She grabbed her fur coat and went out the door and began to trudge up the mountain toward the fire that she saw blazing there.
When she saw the 12th month, just for a moment she hesitated. But then she stepped out of the shadows and started to warm herself without asking for permission. January, who was sitting on the high seat again, looked very, very stern. What brings you here, girl? The sister didn't even look at him. That is none of your concern, old man. And she turned and walked away. January was watching her. Then he swung the staff above his head, and the fire went smaller and smaller. It was just glowing, and a cold, fierce wind came. It started to snow so heavily that the sister was hardly able to see the hand in front of her. She didn't know where she was walking, and soon she fell into a deep heap of snow. And it was so deep she couldn't get out of it again. She cursed. Oh, she cursed Marushka. She cursed the 12th month. She cursed heaven and earth. She cursed until her lips froze and she couldn't move anymore.
Meanwhile, back at the house, the mother fretted, paced, wondering what was taking her daughter so long, why she wasn't coming home. Finally, she couldn't stand waiting any longer. She went and got her coat and said, I'm going out to find her, to be with her. And she left Marushka alone and began walking in the direction that she saw the footprints in the snow. Marushka waited. She prepared dinner. She put candles in the window to help light their way coming home. But the mother and the sister never came back. And that left Marushka in the house. Of course, she knew how to take care of the house because that is what she had always done. She knew how to keep it clean, how to take care of the cow, how to live on her own. And she did for a while. But eventually, she met a young man. And that young man and she shared their life together. And they lived happily and well.